I'm not going to show you the whole process of taking the raw lumber bought from my local timber yard and putting it through planer thicknesses and bandsaws and all that boring stuff, because quite frankly, if you're planning on building a workbench and you don't know how to use a bandsaw, you need to be looking at a completely different tutorial, or buying pre-dimensioned lumber. Anyhow, basically this is almost every single piece of wood for my new bench. Huge thick ash slabs, and we'll talk about that later. There's no need to make your bench out of 400 different pieces of wood at the top. The rails, I bought these rails, it's local sycamore from my local timber yard. He used to be a firewood supplier, and it looks like it's actually got, well, it does have figuring in it. It's flamed sycamore, normally used for violin making and the like, and that is spalted alder, because quite frankly it's pretty and I like it. Anyway, on to some hand planing now. I am very obviously somebody who loves planes and hand planes and all that sort of stuff. However, I'm also a hybrid woodworker, which is I think the current catchphrase, and I will use a power tool if it's going to save me time. Basically I have to make a living making things out of wood, don't I? Now, I didn't want to run this over the top of my big planer thicknesser because frankly it's too damn heavy. And I have got this lovely big old triple blade, huge precision power planer from Triton, and I'm not going to have very much use for it in day-to-day guitar building work, so I'm going to be using it today. So once I have finished roughing, well, getting rid of the rough, it's onto a hand plane. And this is the first time I've ever properly needed a number 8. This is a number 7, and I could do with a bigger plane. Now the problem with the Triton is that it's left us high there, and with a bit of a gap there. And the beauty of using this little hand plane, I've got a curve on the blade and I can pinpoint where I want to cut. I have jointed. I've cut the joints. And the big problem now is that I'm dropping wood all over the place. These are very heavy, which is kind of the whole point, really. Now, when building a guitar, I fettle and I fettle and I fettle and I change, and it sometimes takes quite a while to get a joint to fit perfectly. This is a workbench. I don't have to have an absolutely, well, I don't have to have a guitar quality joint. However, I can already feel and see that this is too, well, it's bowed, so, and unfortunately the only way to find that out is to lump heavy bits of wood around. Now we've been talking, a lot of people will use lots of small bits of timber to make your bench top and they just laminate it together. And that isn't, it's not necessarily more stable. It's not necessary to do that from a stability point of view. Any bench is going to need you to flatten the top every year or so anyway. And it's much more difficult to do. It's more about being able to find large bits of wood. And again, I'm quoting the god of bench making, Christopher Schwarz, at the moment. He says the same thing. He's made them out of many pieces and he's made them out of one or two. And it makes no odds. Personally, I prefer the look of a two-piece bench. It looks like a guitar. And that's what I've done. Although it's making this particular process, it's slightly heavier to load them around, but the jointing process is going to be much easier because it's just one joint as opposed to 10 or 15. And because they've both gone through the planer thicknesser at the same time, it's basically going to be flat once they joint it, as long as I joint it properly. Anyhow, I now know what my problem is. I've got a gap in the middle and I need to find where that gap is. Normally on a guitar I just swoosh the body left, right and see where the gap moves to. And I'm going to have a go at doing that this time. It's all just much bigger. The bench that I'm working on is rubbish. So I've moved that along a little bit. Move it along that way. It looks to me like the bend is in the top piece, so I'm going to have to do yet more lugging around and get this back into the vices. I've been jointing and jointing and jointing, and that is one of the most difficult joints I've ever had to make. It's wide and long, and I have a natural proclivity towards making dust. Twisting. The way your body works as you're holding a plane changes things. Here is a lovely old rusty quick release vise, and if I can get that cleaned up properly, that's what I want to use on the bench, because I like it. You know I like vintage tools. Anyhow, here's the joint, and I'm going to get some clamps out now and see how we go. I want this joint to last forever and ever and ever, and while I have been railing against polyurethane, because quite frankly I don't like it very much, it is one of those glues that's basically, to all intents and purposes, bulletproof, and I have quite a lot of it to use up. So for this joint I'm going to use polyurethane. Well, you've heard me talk about it before, and I'm going to be doing various videos specifically on glues and types of glues. But yeah, I don't think this is going to come apart for love nor money once it's glued, which is good because I don't want it to. This is like, it feels like I'm building a 6-foot long guitar body. It's very strange. Anyhow, glue on, and I don't have credit card things to spread it. If you don't spread your glue out nice and evenly over a surface, even if it's polyurethane, which is supposedly a gap-filling formula, then the joint is not perfect. Tight bond is also used quite a lot for gluing benches up and stuff, and yeah, just general wood glue. There's no, well, I'm no expert in building workbenches. Anyhow, so glue, spread. Another reason I like poly sometimes is it's got a very long open time. It'll sit here and sit here for a relatively long time before it starts going off. And then once you put it under pressure, it starts going off pretty much immediately. Okay, now you saw me spread it with the credit card or the business card. Once I've got the joint on, what a stable workbench I'm building this workbench on. Once I've got it, I spread it all out again by doing this. Now, if you've got a perfect joint, rubbing the glue joint creates a suction, and if you've got a perfect joint, that suction will actually hold the two pieces together. And I glued a guitar top together once. It was an inch thick, book matched maple top, and I didn't need clamps. And it was as good as any other joint I've ever done in my life. So the joint has been rubbed, and I have clamps. Did you see that slip? As I start applying the clamps, I put a little bit of pressure, and then I realign and check where I am, because this whole top is slipping and sliding and slipping and sliding, and I don't want it to. I've left this curing overnight. There isn't any reason really to take it apart too early. And every reason to leave it clamped up as long as you possibly can, to be honest. I'm not looking forward to flattening this thing.